Oh, hello, peasants. And welcome back to part 3 of designing your island. So by this point, you should have a theme in mind, or at least accepted that you're not going to have a theme and instead just have a beautiful hodgepodge of things. But regardless, you should also have a list of areas you're going to put onto your island and a loose idea of where each area will go. Don't judge me. And if you don't have these things, well, what are you doing here? You got 2 other videos to watch, huh? But since you do have a plan, or lack thereof in acceptance, it is time to execute.
Say what?
Say what?
Say what?
Say
what?
And how do you do that, friends? Well, my biggest tip is by doing it one area at a time, while knowing that you can always come back to finish areas later. So expanding on this in greater detail, what I mean is that if you ever pay attention to kind of the backgrounds of my videos, oftentimes you will see some partially worked on things along with some not so natural disasters. But since we're working section by section, I like to start either one of 2 ways. 1, with areas that I know I have all the furniture for, or 2, with areas directly around your resident services. And I often flop between the 2 of these because, again, you can come back later to finish areas. But the benefit of working with an area that you already have all the stuff for is that you can just start the area and complete it and feel good knowing that one section is done. And the benefit of working with areas near your resident services is this can make terraforming a lot easier. So on my previous island build, the areas around my resident services were fairly flat because I was going for more of a tiered island, meaning the front was fairly flat, the middle is the second layer for the most part, and the third was finally the tippity top. But when I went to rebuild everything, I wanted more of a roller coaster of destruction effect. So the terraforming is kind of all over the place, and this is where starting with areas near your resident services and then moving out can come in handy, especially if terraforming frightens you. So I started with my entrance and then moved over to this left side, eventually got to the back, and then just yesterday finished off this right side, which in total is actually a big part of my island. Along with this, I have worked on other areas that, again, I just had all the furniture for, and if we look at this now, I actually have a decent amount of my map already done, which often helps answer the age-old question to flatten or not to flatten, which Lopez is definitely thinking about right now. So for me, I find flattening out and completely clearing an area does help me before I go to build, which is where working with one area at a time can help make this feel a lot less overwhelming. Second tip is to sketch out areas ahead of time. So in my last video on building a lookout area, I talked about making only one line of terraformed land before doing the same with the river. And I did these just in one line again to just sketch everything out because it helps my brain at least see loosely how things are going to look before I actually end up doing everything. So I do this a lot with rivers, raised areas of terraformed land, and even just paths. This area here is actually not quite done, as you can see, because I am missing some items to finish it off that I just haven't found yet or the recipes for, but I know I'm going to want roughly this much room for a proper adult pool area, a bar, and a restaurant. So what I have done is just place the sand all over this area, place a little bit of fencing around here, and just done this to kind of mentally block this area off until I have all of the items or give up and turn it into something else. Which leaves us with just piecing the areas together. But I understand that this sounds a lot easier than it actually is done because there's the old terrifying thing called terraforming. So what I recommend is instead of getting caught up in where bridges and inclines and every single little thing is going to go and getting really stressed out, instead do all of your terraforming and path placing and all of your building before you move any buildings, bridges, or inclines. So what I mean by this is if you're trying to plan out your residential area, for example, I find it helpful to start by clearing out roughly a big enough area to fit all of your residential things. Again, it's just a starting place. But instead of moving the houses and then trying to piece everything together, I like to use placeholders for where the buildings will go. So in this example, I simply counted the number of tiles on each side with this darker path to make sure things were even. But if it's helpful, I also sometimes use dropped items or even flowers can serve really well as just like an easy visual placeholder, especially on bigger projects that you might be coming back to. Because a quick Google search will tell you how many tiles wide and long any of the buildings are, and then you can just plan accordingly. Then I start building around it. So if you know you want a bunch of houses in a certain layout, kind of like I have, what I would do, and what I did do, is put in temporary flower plots, and then place your paths, river, terraform the ground, anything that you want to do until you are happy, and then you can move all of your homes slowly, one by one, day after day. It took me a while. And my final tip is when you are figuring out how all the areas are going to work together, do not underestimate the power of roads. Once you have some of your larger areas figured out, if you attach a road from one area to the other, this is going to help a lot before you get into actually terraforming or starting up another section, because you already have a path between them created. So in my next video in this series, I will be sharing with you how I come up with areas, a little bit more detail of the areas themselves, how I figure out the designs for them, and all those kinds of details. But that is everything for today. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that it was helpful for you. Again, just remember, like, it doesn't have to be stressful. Your island is gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be okay. Believe in yourself, kids.